Hi, Brian.
Hi, Harry.
Why do you believe that when you say, Kremlin is in panic,
Well,
what makes you to believe that?
I think that, well, the behavior of the Russian elite right now leads me to believe that. Let's look back the last couple of weeks. We've seen a lot of, let's face it, strange things. Burning food on the border, burning flowers. You know, it almost has this ritualistic quality to it. You had Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's very odd behavior at the press conference this week with the Saudi foreign minister using unprintable words or words that we certainly can't say on your program. This is from Sergei Lavrov, who's like Mr. Cool, right? He's like the smoothest guy on the planet. And when he loses his composure in public like that, it's one sign that something's wrong. The odd behavior of burning the food.
You think he's nervous?
I think everybody's nervous inside the Russian elite right now. I think everybody is very nervous right now. Look, it's been fashionable for the last God knows how many years to talk about Vladimir Putin like he's the man with the plan, the master of the universe, you know, the spinner of the great conspiracies. If you look at it right now, I don't think that's the case. I think that Putin has backed himself into a corner. He's backed himself into a corner in Ukraine. He's backed himself into a corner inside Russia domestically, and he's backed himself into a corner with the economy, and he's backed himself into a corner in his relations with the rest of the world, and that this regime has really reached the point of diminishing returns. I mean, I don't think Putin has any more rabbits he can pull out of the hat, so to speak, and I think the elite understands this, and they're nervous. They're nervous because the smarter people in the elite understand that this can't go on with Putin anymore. They can't live with him. But the problem is they also can't live without him. Because if you remove Putin, people fear about he's created a system that's just centered around this one man. This is extremely dangerous, not just in Russia, in any political system. Stable political systems are based on institutions. And stable and hopefully accountable and democratic institutions, but at least institutions. The Chinese system's not democratic, but it's very stable. Why? It's not based on personalities. It's based on institutions. The situation with Putin right now is that he's created a situation where the country can't live with him anymore, and they can't live without him. And thus we're seeing all this craziness because people don't know what to do. And so
why is that? We remember Putin as a prime minister, as a president in his first term. He has created pretty team of pragmatic, economists.
But he's not listening
they were
to them
like
anymore.
Technocrats.
He's not listening to them.
He had very good,
Well,
by
you're
the
right.
way, experts in his government, right?
In Putin's first 2 terms in the Kremlin, he did a very skillful job, or I should say his team did a very skillful job, specifically his chief ideologist, Vladislav Surkov, Deputy Kremlin Chief of Staff, did a very skillful job of balancing and co-opting different elements in society. So he brought in Alexei Kudrin. He brought in liberals like Alexei Kudrin, but he also co-opted nationalists, and he was balancing these different elements in society, and it reflected itself in government policy. So he did things to please the liberals. He did things to please the nationalists. Putin was kind of seen as an honest broker among the different groups in the Russian elite and the different groups in Russian society. And this is why he was so successful, one of the reasons he was so successful in his first 2 terms as president. What happened is that by 2011, when we saw the big protests in Moscow, that was the result of liberal disappointment. The liberal disappointment manifested itself in those protests. Putin felt correctly that he had lost the liberal portion of society. When he decided to return to the Kremlin in 2012, because the liberal portion of society wanted Medvedev to stay. They wanted kind of a slow evolution into a more pluralistic system. They were disappointed. They took to the streets. Putin lost the liberal side of society. So what did he do? He threw himself entirely in with the nationalists. And this is the situation he's in now. And this is one of the reasons Putin's in trouble now, because he's backed himself into a corner in Ukraine. Speaking of Ukraine. This is the thing. Let's start. Why is Putin in trouble now? Because as I said now, the context we're going from is he threw himself totally in with the nationalists. Now, where is he now? He has no good options in Donbass. I mean, imagine you're Putin and you're sitting in the Kremlin and you're looking at the situation in Donbass. What do you do? What do you do? Do you escalate the conflict and try to take Novorossiya? That's going to be militarily very difficult, if not impossible, I might add, to take that strip of land from Kharkiv all the way to Odessa. Putin, in the beginning, and his strategists thought all of this was just going to fall just like Crimea did. What he didn't understand is that just because you speak Russian, just because Russian's your first language, doesn't mean you're pro-Putin, doesn't mean you're not, you prefer to be in a democratic, albeit imperfect, Ukraine than in an autocratic Russia. And the Russian speakers of Kharkiv, of Odessa, of Mariupol, they have a very different outlook on things than the Russian speakers of Crimea and of Donbass. So to take this whole strip, this Novorossiya, probably militarily, if not impossible, extremely difficult and extremely costly. So that's out. Let's say that's out. You can't do that. You could maybe try to get a little bit more territory. You could probably try to get Mariupol or make a push towards Kharkiv. Also extremely difficult. And if you do these things, you're going to lose a lot of men. It's going to be costly in terms of blood, costly in terms of treasure, and it's going to cause sanctions to increase. So really doing that is not really an option right now.
And you think he's not planning to do something?
He may be. I don't know what he's planning, because God, when a man's backed into a corner, he can be very dangerous. And I think this man backed into a corner can be extremely dangerous. So I don't know what but if you're looking at what your options are and what's good and what's bad, the bad outweighs the good in trying to either take all of Novorossiya, which I think is impossible, but highly unlikely, and even trying to make a move towards Mariupol is going to be extremely difficult and costly. The sanctions are going to be increased. So you can't do that. Do you annex this territory? I mean, really, we're not talking about annexing Switzerland here. We're talking about annexing, we're not even talking about annexing Crimea here. We're talking about annexing the most economically depressed, unproductive part of Donbass. Russia really doesn't want this territory. This never was about this bit of territory. So do you annex it? Do you create a protectorate there, a frozen conflict like we have in South Ossetia or Abkhazia? Yeah, you can do that. But you do that, sanctions, of course, are going to continue. And also, you're going to be stuck. You broke it, you own it. You're going to be stuck rebuilding and financing this devastated, economically unproductive part of it at a time when Russia's economy is a mess. What Putin would like to do at this point, according to my analysis of the situation, what he would like to do is to force this territory back into Ukraine, but on Russia's terms, meaning broad autonomy. They want to create a situation.
Keeping, like, restoring some sort of influence in Ukraine.
Yes,
right?
because they want to use it as a Trojan horse, as a fifth column. They want to basically turn Ukraine into something like Bosnia-Herzegovina, where you have Republika Srpska, which prevents the rest of the country from really going forward. He wants to do the same thing in Ukraine, but the thing is, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko is smart, and he's wise to this, and he's preventing this from happening. The West understands this is happening, and they're not letting Putin do it this way. If this goes back into Ukraine, it's not going to go back the way Putin wants. So he's really boxed into a corner. He has no way out right now.
But also, you should say that the Ukrainian people, they don't want that, really.
They don't want that. They don't want. They'll fight. They'll fight it. So really, he has no good options.
Ukrainian army is
Ukrainian army is
stronger.
performing much better than anybody dared expect.
Well organized now. I mean, it's
well
getting
organized.
better.
I mean, it still is no match for the Russian army. The Russian army is much bigger, but it can inflict unacceptable damage. And also, you got to remember, if Russia tries to occupy places like Mariupol, Kharkiv, Odessa, you're talking about occupying very, very hostile territory. These people may speak Russian, but they're not pro-Putin.
But is it long-term, thinking? In the long term, I assume they should think about having
they're not doing long-term
neighbor
thinking.
Which will be in good relations with them, especially Ukrainians, that they claim they're brothers.
Look, logically, that would make sense, but it also, logically, you would think that the Russian elite wouldn't want to insult Armenians either. But look at the way they treated Electric Yerevan.
Yeah.
They talked about it like it was some CIA plot. Now, if you look at it, my first reaction to that is that this is deeply insulting to Armenians. It's like saying, you're nothing, you're just puppets. All you people that are risking your lives going out and protesting, you're just puppets in the hands of the CIA. That's insulting to Armenians. If I were Armenian, I would have been very insulted by that, to say, I don't have my own agency. I'm not out here for my own reasons.
Are acting in Armenia.
So yeah, if they had long-term thinking, they would be behaving a lot differently, but they don't. They resemble a jazz band improvising to get out of every crisis. Now, Putin has also boxed himself into a corner at home, really, domestically in Russia. The Russian economy is in deep, deep, deep trouble. Inflation is rising. It contracted by more than 4% last quarter. The ruble's at 65 the last time I checked. It's almost to the lows it was at the beginning of this year. You want to look at one good statistic that sums this up. In 2008, Gazprom was worth $360 billion. It was the biggest the biggest company in the world.
How big is it now?
$55 billion.
55
more than six. It's lost more than 80% of its value. Now, as goes
that's
Gazprom,
a decline of national wealth, right?
And Gazprom is a good runner.
much.
So Putin's in trouble at home because what does he need? He needs sanctions lifted. He needs access to credits. He needs investment to give the economy some breathing space. To do that, he has to back down in Ukraine. But if he backs down in Ukraine, he's going to infuriate this nationalist base that I talked about. Remember, he lost the liberals, so he's relying on the nationalists. If he backs down in Ukraine, he's going to lose the nationalists. So so Putin's really put himself into a corner in Ukraine and at home. So the elite understands this. The elite understands this, and that's why they're
The
nervous.
next question is about Western sanctions. There's a danger there that the countries that are closely associated with Russia, but also have very good relations with the West, they might suffer a lot, enormously. And they will, the economic damage could be enormous also on these countries.
You're talking about Russia's neighbors, not Armenia.
Yes.
No,
Armenia,
this is true.
Others,
This is true, and I mean, I don't think the damage will be as enormous as people think, but there's going to be damage. But the trick there is you got to do what Ukraine's doing. Divert your trade or divert your business away from Russia and towards the West or towards China. You're starting to see actually not just the West, but China getting involved in Ukraine. China, supposedly Russia's big strategic ally, right?
Yes.
Well, guess what? They're doing business with Georgia, big time. They're doing business with Ukraine, big time. China's playing its own game. And this is, I mean, the countries that are Russia's neighbors, they have to wean themselves off of Russia. I know, it's hard to, the proximity is very important, and you're never going to not do business with Russia. But you need to these countries need to diversify who they do business with to make themselves not so dependent on Russia and not so vulnerable when Russia gets in trouble with the rest of the world as it's getting in trouble with the rest of the world right now. I don't know if you saw the Pew Global Attitude Survey about global attitudes towards Russia. Well, it's amazing. I mean, after spending $500 million a year on this global propaganda effort on RT and all this stuff, you would think Russia's global reputation would be in better shape, but it's not. It's terrible. The median positive across the world, the median positive attitude towards Russia, 30%. 30%. In Europe, 26%. Latin America, 29%. Africa, 37%. Asia, 37%.
Putin had pretty high rating
a few years ago, just a few years ago. If you go back 2010, 2011, Russia's global rating was in very good shape. It was in very good shape. It was similar to the United States.
That means that the rest of the world is fed up with
the rest of the world is fed up. One statistic jumped out at me: the Middle East, right? The Middle East. Russia's rating in the Middle East is worse than the United States' rating. This is the worst region for the U.S. is the Middle East, but the U.S. is doing better. And if the only thing worse than Russia's rating in the world is Putin's rating. Putin's rating in the world is 24%. In Europe, it's 15%.
15.
So really, I mean, the world is souring on Russia right now, and with good reason. It's not because any kind of inherent anti-Russian feeling. Like I said, just a few years ago, the world was very positive. It's Putin. It's what Putin has done over the last couple of years, and it's across the board.
So, Brian, thank you very much. Continue watching Putin.
I will. I'm doomed to continue watching Putin. It's my job.
We will ask for your opinion and your predictions. What will happen, next?
I'm always glad to join you, Harry. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.